Today we're going to be answering the age-old question of whether or not machines are better than free weights, but more so a greater principle of how we can look at these exercise variations, how we can organize them, how we can more effectively train them and apply them based on our very specific goals for ourselves. So instead of looking at it as this is better than that, we're going to put some more context around it, look at this very key principle, and I'm going to help you answer that question for yourself. When it comes to answering this question of free weights versus machines, one of the key principles I want to look at is looking at them or categorizing them as a skill exercise versus an output exercise. Kind of looking at those two things, we can both generally categorize exercises, but also for an individual, there's going to be some subjective differences from person to person based on their skill level. What is a skill exercise? We're looking at things that are going to be more technically demanding, usually things that have more complexity to them, like more compound movements with less external stability. Something that might be way less skill, like a bicep curl, as opposed to something that's very high skill, like a low bar squat, or even like a Bulgarian split squat, for example. Things that are a bit more complex, harder to execute, less external stability, more demand for internal stability, and also more loadable. We're going to categorize those as skill exercises. Now, then we get into the question of why even train those if we can't train them as hard. How should we train them? What's the trade-off? How are we going to program these things? I want to get into that after I talk about what an output exercise is, just to give you some more context. Thinking about output, we're thinking about training exercises to a close degree of mechanical failure without a high skill demand, or it's just going to be generally easier to train these things hard without technique breaking down, for a lack of better phrasing. So looking at output exercises, we're thinking things that are more machine in nature or single joint in nature, like I said earlier, a bicep curl, or even better, a machine bicep curl. Things like a hack squat, a leg press, hamstring curl, chest press, usually things that have more external stability, lower skill demand. We can train them much easier to mechanical failure without technique breaking down. So that'll delineate between skill and output. When it comes to how we train these exercises, anything where we hit technical failure first is going to be something that we're going to categorize more as a skill exercise. So you can see how somebody who's more novice to intermediate, they may actually break down technique on a machine first, right? So if we're breaking down technique on a machine as a more novice intermediate trainee, then that's going to be categorized as still a skill exercise for them. So when it comes to choosing these exercises and choosing how we train them, let's make sure that we can delineate between what technical failure is and what mechanical failure is. Technical failure, breakdown in form. In most cases, we never really want to train past technical failure. One, we want to build this skill and make sure that we're practicing good habits so that we can improve our ability to do the movement well. Also, we're not going to really be getting a benefit, or potentially even might increase our risk of having something funky going on from like an injury standpoint if we're training past technical failure. So generally speaking, we need to find out what our technical cutoffs are, stop around there. Whether it's free weights, whether it's machines, that's a pretty good hard rule to follow. Now you might ask, is it worth the trade-off to even train a lot of technically demanding exercises? I'll say yeah, because usually the trade-off is going to be us building that skill, have more carryover to other exercises, or it's just more loadable. So certain things like a barbell RDL, although we may always hit something close to technical failure, it's very loadable. So our ability to load the exercise will beat out any bit of mechanical failure that we're leaving in the tank on that exercise. Another thing to look at is just generally speaking, training function at a main point. So if we're doing an exercise that's going to be helping us improve hip function or shoulder function, then it's worth having that exercise in, even if it's not a meathead trained to mechanical failure exercise. That's going to help us grow. It'll help us grow in other ways. Loadability, function, those are two things that are going to be worth the trade-off. Now, generally speaking, just circling back to exercises that are going to be higher in output. Output just going to mean we're going to be training those closer to mechanical failure with more relative ease as far as skill demand or technique goes. Thinking like hack squat, leg press, chest press, machine row, things where we have more external stability. It's easier to train close to mechanical failure there. Those are exercises where we might include as our main hypertrophy stimulus, or things that are going to be later in a day. So generally speaking, from an organizational standpoint, higher skill exercises are going to come first, higher output exercises are going to come second. It's worth having some trade-offs from a loadability standpoint, from a function standpoint, to include those skill exercises. One's not inherently better for the other. Sure, if we wanted to only train for hypertrophy, maybe we do more machine-based work, but the trade-off for that might be lack of training for proper function. training certain end ranges, etc. So putting things in context, how we apply this, skill versus output, categorize what a skill exercise is for you. For example, somebody might be very proficient at back squatting and they might be able to train it very close to mechanical failure. For them, it might be a caveat there where that actually is a higher output exercise, right? Somebody who's new to the gym may not be able to train a bicep curl to a relative failure point without technique breaking down first. So there's going to be some subjectivity here based on the person. Generally speaking, though, let's apply this sort of principles to our training. It'll help us better choose exercises for our goal. Not only choose them, kind of change how we apply ourselves to the exercise and how we train them, whether it's technical failure or mechanical failure, and how we prescribe intensity. And also, it's going to help us just progress longer in the long run. We put things in context, understand that it's not so black and white. One's not inherently better for the other, but more so, it's going to be for our own goals. This might apply differently. So contextually, we might have both skill and output exercises on the same day that are redundant. For example, dumbbell press, machine press. Whatever we're missing in regards to getting close to mechanical failure on the dumbbell press, we'll make up for on the machine press. Or like the RDL variation I mentioned earlier, maybe we had a leg press in on the same day to get some extra high output or reps in close proximity to mechanical failure on the leg press. But before you choose, this is good, this is bad, put these things in context, apply it to yourself. If you have any more questions, click the link in bio. Always happy to help.